During the years of my secondary education, we participated as a year group in a pilot teaching strategy which a few of the teachers had come up with. This was in regards to help us understand global warming, a topic which was on the national curriculum. The teachers had arranged themselves into 3 different classrooms, each taking on a different style of teaching. This was in the hope to accommodate for the different learning styles of as many students as possible. Each classroom was strategized in a way that students would focus on learning through a particular learning style. For example, one of the classrooms consisted of only experiments and learning through the medium of doing, rather than just sat in a classroom listening. The second classroom was taught in that traditional method of teaching. The educator showed us slideshows, talking to us whilst stood at the front of the class, encouraging us to make notes and pay close attention to the information given. In the final room, the teacher was just observing whilst splitting the group into smaller groups, and then arranged us onto separate tables. On the tables, we were given scenarios based on the impact of global warming, and we discussed the different factors contributing to global warming, as well as each table choosing one contributing factor to then assess the options on how to reduce its impact on our environment. Before we analyse the anecdote, we shall take a look at 3 different approaches to learning: behaviourist approach, the constructivist approach, and a social cultural learning approach to education. To begin with, behaviourists believe that children are born as blank slates. A metaphor of a black box is often used to describe this. An input is required, which is a stimulus, and then an output is given from the child, which is the response. Operant and classical conditions are often methods that are used to reinforce behaviourist approach to learning. For example, classical conditioning is learning by association. They see what you are doing and how you are teaching, and they learn and pick up from that. Operant conditioning is learning by reinforcement, which is often the case with schools. Learning is reinforced by rewarding good behaviour and punishment for bad behaviour. Next, we take a look at the constructivist approach to learning. In contrast to the behaviourist approach, in the constructivist model, the students are urged to be actively involved in their own process of learning. This means that the student is the person who creates a new understanding for his or herself. The educator in this instant often coaches and moderates, but doesn't give all the information, allowing the student to reflect upon their own understanding and build upon that. Some of the main concepts of socio-cultural learning is enculturation, and learning is thought to occur through the processes of interaction, negotiation, and collaboration. One of the main theorists involved is Lev Vygotsky, who believed that social learning preceded development. One of his main concepts was the concept of the more knowledgeable other, in which one person who has more knowledge over the rest of the students or classroom would then relay the information that he or she knows to the rest of the group. By analysing the anecdote, you can see that one of the classrooms took a very behaviourist approach to learning. The main purpose of this was to ensure our knowledge on the subject before expanding upon it in the other classrooms in the constructivist approach or the socio-cultural learning approach. When we entered the classroom, we were treated as blank slates, as if we had no prior knowledge on the subject, and were then given information which we were expected to make notes upon and reflect on ourselves. At the end of the session, we were then given questions on which we had to attempt either individually or in small groups, which tested our knowledge on the subject. At the start of the session, the input or the stimulus was the information the teacher relayed onto us, and at the end of the session, the output, which was the response, was us answering the questions. Operant conditioning was most rife towards the end of the session, where we were attempting questions. The teacher often walked around the classroom and commended those students who were doing well and sanctioned those students who were not taking the session seriously or not doing as well, and helped those students who needed it. One of the classrooms took a more constructivist approach to learning. This was a classroom in which we engaged in several experiments which catered more towards those individuals who preferred learning through the means of doing an experiment rather than sitting in the classroom and listening as it was in the behaviorist approach classroom. After partaking and completing the assigned task, it was understood why he didn't tell us the product that we were getting at the end. The teacher or the educator in this instant wanted us to work out what the end product was ourselves using previously assumed knowledge from other classrooms or from previous sessions in school. By having that knowledge, we were then able to expand upon that by trying to figure out what the end product was. One of the final theories is socio-cultural learning theory. This took place in two of the classrooms, the one in which constructivism was the major aspect, and the other classroom in which we were split into several groups. The classroom that we were split into several groups, we were put onto tables with people that were different from us in the sense where they were different genders, from a different background, and a different cultural background. This allowed us to all have a view on different perspectives on the issues of global warming, and it allowed us to come together and negotiate to try and find the best solution to the problems that we were given. So we've looked at the three different types of learning theories, but we're yet to look on the philosophical perspectives on learning. There are three major philosophical perspectives: qualification, socialization, and subjectification. Qualification is one in which was used throughout all three different classrooms. It's providing learners with the knowledge, skills, and understanding necessary to undertake important tasks. Socialization is helping learners become part of a particular socio-cultural and political traditions. This occurs more in socio-cultural learning, as done so in the third classroom. We were discussing the ideas on our own point of view on how it affect our own culture and tradition, whereas the political side was not mentioned as much, which could be a reference for teachers in the future to implement that into their teaching styles as well. The final philosophical perspective is subjectification, which is helping learners find ways of becoming independent of existing social, cultural, and political roles and traditions. By looking at the three perspectives, qualification was the one which was used most within the classrooms, not so much with socialization and subjectification. This was because the information that we were receiving was to help us develop our understanding on this topic, which would then help us pass our exams and get better jobs, etc. Whereas there wasn't any need for us in this situation about global warming to learn about becoming part of particular social, cultural, and political traditions, or becoming independent from them. From my experience of this session, it was clear that a lot of the students who previously didn't understand aspects of the topic began to understand, and this was because of the different ways that the teachers approached it. However, looking at this on a day-to-day basis throughout the classroom, it wouldn't work as well, as you'd only be able to attend one session a day, meaning a lot of the information would be forgotten from the previous session. This would affect the classroom which took a constructivist approach, which assumes previous knowledge, as a lot of the knowledge previously learned would be forgotten by that time, and a lot of the students did find that maybe a week after the session had finished, most of the information was not retained.